Welcome back to Built Fabrications. As you see behind me, we have the frame back in the shop. We finished sandblasting, which was in the last episode, so if you missed that one, definitely go and make sure you give that a look. So a big elephant in the room is the big blue tarp that we have on the floor, which is going to be prepped for paint, which should be in the next episode, so definitely be on the lookout for that. But today what we're working on is installing a Classic Performance Products C-Notch Kit in the rear end of the chassis for the C10. So I'm going to get working on that, and I'll get you guys in here in a minute. You can see the riding on the pavement. Young kids that growing up in basements. I'm using a Classic Performance Products C-Notch Kit, and the kit itself doesn't come with a template. And if you look at the way that this is, where it goes on the frame has actually a couple jogs in it. So you can't just line this up to the frame and trace it and cut out what you need to for the notch. So what I'm going to be doing is trying to make my own template. I'm using some poster board that I picked up from the store. It's basically the same thing as cardstock, and you can use anything that's like a thick paper, should work fine. And that goes for a lot of fabrication things that I'll probably be using this method a lot in the future. So what I'm going to try to do here is set it on, you can see where it's lifted, and I'm going to trace out what I can and roll this to get these first flat edges, and then mark it out, and then I'll flip it and get it where it lifts up, and then get this little jog here, and then do the same for the rest, and then I'll come underneath and trace this out and trim it. So I'm going to get working on this and see if I get a template made on this side, and I'll do the same for the other. So now that we have this mocked up, I added these lines because these should be roughly, it's not going to be precisely where the bends are, but what we can do with having those lines is whenever we go out into the shop and we put this template up to the frame, we can roughly line that up with where the bends on the frame are, and that will center us. So with this sitting on top of the frame, you can see how it has that natural curve in it where the rear of the frame narrows. And we're going to be using, wherever the stock bump stop was, the bracket, we're going to be using this center rivet that's still in there that we're going to have to get out. That's going to be our center point. So you can see this is where the new bump stop's going to be when we get that put in. And that's pretty much in line with this. And then the bracket itself, you could line it up and you could see how and where it tapers. So this is pretty close to where it's going to be. I'm going to go ahead and get this template taken off and taped onto the frame, and we'll see what that's looking like. And if everything's looking good for that, we're going to go ahead and make a template for the other side, do the same thing. This is the fitment that I'm getting on it, which seems pretty close to me. Something to keep in mind with your template is you're going to have the thickness of the steel. This is going to sit underneath the frame on both sides here. So make sure you accommodate for that little bit of a lip underneath the template. With this, something that we're going to have to do that I'll show you whenever we get to that point is a lot of the times these cross members, the bottom of them sticks out a little bit. So we're gonna have to cut that off so that this kit can bolt flush to the frame. So I'm gonna go ahead. I'm pretty satisfied with how this came out. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side and get back with you. I got the other side mocked up. A couple things that I do wanna add is, so if you look at the bracket here, we got these 2 holes in the rear and we've got these 3 underneath. And so what those are gonna have to line up with are where there's supposed to be a rivet here and there's the rivet in the back. I'll show you that on the top. So those are gonna need to come out. We're gonna put bolts in there. And then same thing for wherever the spring mounts right here. We're gonna be taking out this rivet and using a bolt in there. And same thing for this side here. And then in the middle here is where you're gonna have your bolt that holds the spring clamp on it. So what I did here on the template is I just lined up right in line with where those rivets are as kind of a guide. And I did the same thing with this rivet here. I marked it where it is on the template and then where it is on the frame. So that way it gives just another point to line up to try to make sure we get this notch in the right place. So I'm gonna work on getting those rivets taken out, grinded off, which you guys, if you've been following the videos, have seen 1,000,001 times now. I'll obviously show you a little bit of it, but I'm not gonna go into a real in-depth on it. And then another thing that we need to do at some point here before we start cutting out any material is we need to support the back of the frame. So that way, whenever we take this material out, the frame doesn't wanna sink in on itself with it missing this material. So I'll just take a piece of wood or something and I'll brace it underneath and clamp it to that. And that just gives it an extra support there. So this is the inside of those 2 rivets that I was showing you underneath. So the other rivet that was missing that you couldn't see underneath is still there. I don't know how this would have happened, but this plate here got lifted up and pulled that rivet out. So what I'm actually thinking about doing is, if I can, I might just trim off this end of the tab and then I'll take off the rivet either top or bottom and knock it out and just take this whole piece. So I'm not totally sure if I'm gonna do that yet or just remove the rivets, because the problem that I see going forward is if I don't remove this lifted piece, I mean, it's thick enough that it's not pliable. And since we need to use a hole down there and run a bolt through, this lifted plate is going to be in the way, and I think that's going to cause problems. So I think it's just better to remove it. I don't think it'd be a big problem if we do remove it, because you still have, we're going to have the bolt hole here, or I guess if we remove this part, we're not going to have here, but we'll have this rivet still, plus all the rivets here on this other side. So this support and everything is still going to be very well braced. So now that I have that cut off and ground down flush, I got the back of the frame supported and we got all the rivets out. I think the next step here is to do the very unnerving thing of cutting it out. So I got the frame notched out and have the brace fit up inside of it. If you saw in the video, I had to open up this side a little bit more, which I was expecting. You obviously want to go a little less and then trim a little bit as need be, as opposed to cutting too much. And by tracing on the inside line here, you still have the thickness of the metal on the inside for this box, if you would. And it's not really a box, but the channel. So that's gonna take up space, but whenever I cut it out, I just had to do a little bit more here on the back. So I got that trimmed out, and then I had to do a little bit of trimming on the inside part, but it fit up pretty good. All the holes thankfully lined up nice. So what I have here, I got the bolts in the bottom holding this up that came with the kit. And then I took a center punch, punched out all these holes, and I put a little bit of a paint marker in there. So I'm gonna go and drill these holes out, and pretty much got this in the bag at that point. So I got the C-Notch kit taken out, and I have this all painted. That way, you know, we don't have any bare metal that's not gonna get coated whenever we get this frame coated in the next episode. So I got the outside here, I got underneath, made sure to cover anything that we just cut, as well as I got the inside painted. Same thing goes for the C-Notch kit itself. So I'm gonna pop this back in and then show you the final product on the side. So that's it, fully installed. Got it all bolted in, painted, ready to go. So obviously, you know, I'm gonna come through and paint all this when I do the rest of the frame, but just wanted to throw down some paint anywhere that was gonna be underneath bolts where butted up to bare metal surface so that it's coated so no rust can get to it. So this, I'm gonna go ahead and cut the video off here and jump over to the other side to get it knocked out. It's the same process as this one. The only difference is wherever we had the two bolts on the front, on the back, that had that bracket that we had to cut off. On the other side, there's still two bolts, but they're in a different location. But same process for the other side. So I'm gonna jump over there, get that knocked out, and keep in mind the next episode is gonna be paint. We're gonna get this frame coated, and you know, got something pretty cool for that I think is gonna be helpful for a lot of the people who are on a budget and can't necessarily afford or wanna spend the money on powder coating. So definitely be on the lookout for that. That should be posting the Friday after this video is posted. And until next time, keep on keeping on. Thank you guys.